Grief is something that we don't often speak about. We try to numb the pain and put on the garment of denial, pretending that we're okay and that we are not affected. But sadly, grief cannot be bypassed. In the long run, our subconscious mind betrays us, and in the end, our failure to confront our grief leads us into a downward spiral of dysfunction. Join us as we talk about it on this episode of The Wellness Pod. Ikage. We are dedicated to the wellness of our people, the wellness of Botswana, and we would love for you to join us over the next hour. +26739569662 is the line to WhatsApp in studio, as well as a call on that line as well. Tonight, we are having a very necessary conversation. What do I call it? A sequel to the episode that we've had last week on grief. We were joined by Master Life Coach as well as Grief and Bereavement Coach, Miss Gaone Moatlhodi, and she's back in studio tonight to discuss navigating grief in our daily lives. In our previous episode, we talked about the stages of grief, whether it's the 5 stages or the 7 stages. You see how they sort of manifest for you. Grief acceptance, Mo Botswana. How are we allowed to deal with grief in Botswana? What is considered acceptable and unacceptable in our culture, our societies, as well as the role of emotional intelligence when navigating grief, right? So tonight we are going to continue that conversation and look at a few other areas that we need to touch on, because the conversation is broad and we're going to try to unpack that tonight. Let me start first by welcoming my guests in studio, Agatha and Gaone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hey, how are you? How was your week?
Very pecky. You are very pecky, and I love it. Yes,
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Ladies, it's good to have you back in studio.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to be back. Although the conversation that we are about to have is can get a little bit heavy.
Yeah.
I enjoy the fact that I have the two of you to have this conversation, not just with me, but with other Botswana as well. And other people silently sort of navigate or trying to navigate their grief and not really knowing, are they doing it the right way? Is there a right way to do it? And, as well as, around people who are also grieving and we don't know fully how to treat them, right? So let's first, I'll talk to you, Agatha, about this. Is what is the importance first of acknowledging your grief? Acknowledging maikutlo a gago during this difficult time.
Anything ends up erupting like a volcano. At some point. The mind is very interesting. I always give this analogy. Maikutlo a eleng gore a suppressed. Imagine a garbage bag. When it's left hante for days and days, you have a lot of worms there, you have a lot of stink there, you have a lot of flies there. So that's basically what happens with the psyche. Whenever our emotions are suppressed and we don't make an effort to unpack what we're feeling, we end up like that. It's like rabola. Right. So it's very important to go out there and seek help. And also, Hala, it's important to liberate your soul and your mind and just for your spirit to be at ease. Mo botshelong go na le so se go teng tshela sente gore o kgone go swa sente.
That's right.
So moa wa gago ke so se leng gore se botlhokwa tota. We're told, take care of your body, take care of your hair, take care of your nails, take care of your toenails. You know what I'm saying? But we never really talk about what is it that we're feeling? What does negative emotion mean for us? And for me, the most important thing as a life coach and having people come into my practice and just come for relief. This thing re ska ra tender to our feelings and what we're going through is proving to be very problematic, and maybe that's why we're here. It's just God saying, guys, go out there, spread the message, because ke le netse some sort of bothalenyana gore le kgone go bona sengwenyana le bue le batho le ba re le re thokomelang maikutlo a lona.
Right. Gaone, would you agree with that as somebody who is a master life coach as well as a grief and bereavement coach?
Right. Emma ke go na le mo re go bitsang a ke tsora le tulo to gote trauma body.
Yeah.
So trauma gets stored in the body.
Yeah.
Emma. We do the childhood trauma. So how sa release, like Agatha has already said, how sa release that trauma, it gets stored in your body.
Yes, of course.
So trauma needs an outlet.
Right.
You need to release it.
So then let's get straight into the ways, right? We promised that the first topic of conversation would be unhealthy ways of dealing with grief. Grief manifests differently for batho botlhe. We are not going to experience have a one-size-fits-all approach to grief, right? And you see at the time how you manage your grief. But can we talk about some of the unhealthy ways of managing grief? How badly can you react to grief, especially you, Gaone, what you have seen in your practice as a grief coach?
I would start with the common one, which is substance abuse. That's an unhealthy way of grieving. Alcohol, drugs, they numb that feeling. So most of the time, most people hella griefy. It's a so the first thing you do is reach for that bottle,
right,
or drugs,
right.
That will be the first one. That's a very unhealthy way of dealing with grief.
Yeah.
Because then also, like Agatha has already said, you suppress your emotions. It's a temporary relief,
right?
For a moment you feel good about yourself. For a moment you forget. But then we must also remember alcohol is a depressant, So wabosa dili wabonso avoid matata a gago. I don't know if you want to add on to the substance abuse before we go to the other ones.
No, I think for me, to add on to that, having had that experience, personal experience, you numb it, like Gaone is saying, and there you are thinking, even worse. And also, while you're doing that, there's something called, which was discovered by Carl Gustav Jung, who's a he was a psychiatrist, actually, and a Swiss psychiatrist, I think, he was under Freud at some point. And he did this thing called the archetypes. And one of the archetypes, the shadow. The shadow was your dark side, it's what then comes up. Your negative emotions and all of that. So drinking does nothing for you except bring your dark side out.
Right.
Yeah. And, that side, Leone, remember, that's why we say hurting people hurt others. You start to bleed on other people. So that's really what it is. Bleeding on other people. We're literally saying the shadow's coming up. There you are now. You are literally subjecting other people to your stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, we must always remember we're just delaying. You're just delaying. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you.
The chickens will come home to
roost. Yes, 100%. Yeah, I think also things like promiscuity. I see this a lot. I see a lot of promiscuity. I see a lot of going into relationships just for relief.
Yeah.
Not even relationships, a hookup kind of thing.
To distract yourself with momentary pleasures and
exactly.
And that will fall also under risk taking.
Risk taking, right?
That's one of
Yeah.
So I was gonna go into that. So that's substance abuse, and then there's risk taking, which is,
I think let me let you go on with that.
Yeah. Okay. Risk taking, substance
abuse. Yeah, that's a different one. Yeah. So, with the promiscuity, I feel like it's always very dangerous because you're also not in your right mind. We live right now in a country where we have a lot of HIV cases. And, all you're doing is exposing yourself to all of that. So, we are actually just manifesting dilo tse di sa nnang sentle, and then ka moso re tabe re fila gore botshelo ga bo re rate gore batho ga ba re rate gore kante nna ke inki iragalwa ke dilo wa bona, but at that moment I ke re ga re itemoge ebile ga re ipone sentle ga re itebelle sentle. So for me I see a lot of like Gaone was saying, it's the substance abuse. Then there's the promiscuity. Guys, this is a serious thing. And the rate at which promiscuity is becoming a thing has become a thing in our society. Wa khona bona gore re na le mathata a mantsi.
Bua ka Setswana gore promiscuity ke
Takanno dikobo e senang boikarabelo. Ke yone ke sone Setswana sa teng I get. Mo sa itseng gore gatwe ra kae go iragalang. And also going a little deeper into the spiritual aspect. Remember, the more people you sleep with, the more bodies you take in to you, the more energy.
It's a spiritual exchange.
It's a spiritual exchange. So you are really not doing your body justice.
Yeah. And you're dumping your heavy spirit. Kinda you're grieving. We're
exactly.
talking about grief.
So
we're grieving and like we said, you need an outlet.
Yeah.
But because you're not getting help, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're grieving, you hate your body. And so when you hate your body, you just want to abuse it. You just want to use it, you know, because you don't want to be inside this body.
And the pain that you're feeling.
The pain that you're feeling. You know, you're distracting yourself from what you're actually feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Navigating grief in our daily lives. That's the topic that is at hand tonight on the Wellness Pod. Join our discussion on +267 3956 962. That's our WhatsApp line. You can also call us as we get into Yanong, supporting each other through grief as friends and family, right? How do you deal with people in your life that are grieving? How do you help them? 7:50 is your time, and we will get into that on the other side of this. 7:55 is your time on Gabs FM, Power to Engage Your World. This, ladies and gents, is Purple Nights that you are tuned into. I'm your host for the evening, all the way till 10 p.m. I am Ross, and I am not alone in studio. On Thursdays, we have the Wellness Pod, and tonight I'm with my friends Agatha and Gaone, talking about navigating grief in our daily lives. All right, there are unhealthy ways to deal with grief, and that is through a multitude of ways that we've explained just before the break. You know, the alcohol, substance abuse, as well as promiscuity, risk-taking. There's so many terrible things that you could do to yourself throughout your grieving process that you need to be conscious of the fact that you are doing them, right? So now we're going to move on and talk about supporting people in your life that are grieving. We often don't really know what to say, to batho ba ba swetsweng, and we find ourselves not being able to support them because we just don't know what they need, right? So let's talk about, and use examples of how to support somebody through grief. Not only that, but as well, let's not leave children out of the discussion as well. A lot of times, we have the emotional intelligence to have these conversations, but children fall by the wayside, and we never really know how to deal with them while they're grieving and to talk them through what's going on. So let's talk about support.
I think just before we talk about it, Ross, I think we forgot one thing. Unhealthy ways. Isolation.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Can we just touch on that a little bit?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Because I think a lot of people don't really realize how they're not doing it the healthy way. Yeah. And I was thinking about isolating yourself.
Great minds.
I was thinking, because we tend to isolate. People tend to isolate themselves when they're going through grief.
Yeah.
Solitude is good, but don't isolate yourself.
What is the difference between solitude and isolation, ladies?
Okay. If you want to go. Okay, solitude is when I want to take time. I need my space. I am recognizing through emotional intelligence. I am aware and conscious that I need the space for my time, right? That's solitude. I need some time for me. I need to rest. I can feel my body needs the rest. Isolation is a trauma. It's a trauma response.
Yeah.
I don't want to be around anybody. I'm just, there's a lot of tension there. There's a lot of including anger, including a whole lot of resentment. It doesn't come from from a place of abundance. It's going into a space ulenosi from a place of like, yeah,
you know.
And that's how we start renali cases about suicide. Motho ha se molla ba a fila gore no o batla go chase, o batla go tswa mo lahatseng wa
Right.
yeah.
Right. So
And then-
please go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Are we done with the
I'm done on my part.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yes, please go ahead.
So there's also rushing your healing.
Okay, what does that look like? What's that?
You want to get back into life, go back to normal.
Right.
You don't want to sit, you know, when you're grieving, time is your best friend. Time heals all wounds. So it's very important to take time, sit with your pain, understand your pain, feel it, let it do what it wants to do.
As painful as it is.
As painful as it is, don't try to escape it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you went through something and that pain is trying to lead you out of the pain is trying to lead you out of pain. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The only way out is
The
through.
only way out
Yeah.
is through.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey.
Yeah. So opas ka horare o saloto ka haletse a year ago, 3 years ago. Sit. If you're still feeling it, feel it. Go through it. Don't rush it. The worst mistake is rushing your healing.
As
Yeah.
well as I think rushing into relationships. Because I mean you can't go into a relationship because you're going to expect other people to carry your emotional burden.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is why relationship because so we can actually be available for other people as they are equally available for us. Kana when I am in pain and I'm going through the most, I'm the one who's going to be taking from other people. I'm not going to be giving anything.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
Yeah. So it's very important for us when we're grieving to understand that we need to give ourselves time to recalibrate, to come back to our initial state. Give ourselves time. Listen, the way we are created as human beings, our divinity and our sovereignty allows us to have everything that we need in us. It's all in us.
Your recovery starts with
It starts with you.
you.
Yeah.
100%. So for me, I think that's what that is.
Right. So the unhealthy ways of dealing with grief, if you're listening to us right now, is that drug and substance abuse, promiscuity, risk taking, isolation, as well as rushing your
And
healing
spending a lot of
process.
money.
And spending a lot of
Also not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you stop taking care of yourself. You just stop
Physical
caring.
neglect, Ella.
Yeah.
Agatha touched on self-care. Self-care is very important. Don't stop taking care of yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Ebile o ipeletsa ha o ka kgona.
Exactly.
No. This
Exactly.
feel good,
Yeah.
feel good. Tota ke
Ke
nnete.
nnete.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, ladies, now let's get into supporting somebody who is grieving. What does that look like? Where do we start? We know the quintessential, if you need anything, give me a call. I'm always here. Call me if you need anything. That's how most people know how to respond to motor.
Yeah.
But is that the right thing to say to somebody who's going through a loss?
It's already grief. Go thata go nna le bo right and wrong way because tota ga re itse, as much as we're talking about somebody o lateretsweng o swetsweng o tlhokagaletsweng le rona ba re lekang go comforta le rona we still don't know I kere
Yes.
gore re ire jang.
And some of us have never experienced
We've
the
never
loss.
experienced that,
Yeah.
you know. But now what I will start with is remise go ta siama tha batho ba motho a tlhokagaletse.
And Setswana sa re
Re
gone,
simolela ka
go
go
ta
ta
siama.
siama. You know it is well, you know, and it will be well. But ha ke ta ebe ke ta go te ke setswe ke family othe ka car accident o bota ko go no bong ha go ta siama. Hey, I think really ke go ithuta go if you don't have anything to say, if you don't know what
It's
to
actually
say,
okay to keep
it's
quiet.
okay to keep quiet.
And just
it's
hug,
okay
yeah.
not to say anything. I think sometimes we feel we have to say something. Sometimes your presence is enough.
So when you said, time heals all, what about Motswana o filang gore, but that's just the Setswana translation of go ta siama, ke a go bolella gore in time it will get better. Is it not the same thing?
Mmele so go ta siama ke ra ka ke thokagaletswe ke motsadi yana go siame go to go siama leng o ra jang, especially e le gone go iragalang ke se stilong go siama go ngo ka re tota I don't think re ka tshwana go rialo ne ke re ka re go ngo ka re o ta hola, but you're not supposed to say any, don't say I don't know.
Good enough for me. You know what the problem is? As a culture, we are batho ba victimhood. Now for me, uta siama brings a little bit too much of that victimhood, which does not allow the person. It's not empowering.
It's not empowering.
It's not trying to say to somebody, listen, this is happening to you right now. But also, let's try and seek the help that will help us to become better, to feel better. But I'm with you right now. If you need anything, I'm here. But let's have an honest conversation about what it is that you need. What support do you need? I think the first thing that we need to do is just have honest conversations. Do you want to talk about it? How are you feeling? Do you want me to just sit with you? Do you want me to just listen to you? Another thing is this, Ross. It becomes very difficult for us to support people because to step back and just ask, how can I support you?
Yeah. I think I mentioned it. I don't know if I...
You did.
Yeah. We had this conversation in our previous episode, Gaone Wellness Pod, talking about grief. Hella as somebody who's been through it, and my experience of it now, having been on the other side, is if you really want to... we say a lot, like I said at the beginning of this, if you need anything, call me.
But what does that mean?
But what does that mean? So, yes, the person who is suffering or has suffered a loss does need things. You find yourself overwhelmed during this time. You can't get to a lot of the things that you're used to doing on a daily basis. You feel like it's too soon to be out in spa because, at 8:05 you're fine. At 8:10 you're crying. So sometimes you are too volatile to be outside, and you need things to keep happening, and you need the support with small tasks and things like that. So I think, Hella, in my opinion, if you really want to help somebody, offer a specific and a certain thing. If you can, do you need me to drive to go and get your groceries? Do you need me to pick up the kids go skolong? Do you need me to, I can do this. You need to offer what you are willing and prepared to do, so that you don't end up saying, call me if you need anything, and you find that thing is out of your scope of what you can manage.
I think that's very important. And I also think at the same time, that's why I get going for coaching and going on your personal journey is also very important, so that the day something like this happens to you, now you are in a better position to support yourself as well. Then self-soothing.
Yes.
Autonomy, also we and communicate that, where I am right now, this is what I would like for you to do for me. Because as a coach, now for me personally, what I like to do is I like to listen a lot, because so that's what we go to school for. The client is in a vulnerable state. We have to be able to listen and pick up and get a direct conversation. Na ke a pick up ke tshwantsho re ke nne le bothale jo ke kgonang go bala gore o le ka go reng le ha sa se bui in so many words, even the energy, the tone, and all of that. So it's very important for you, Hela Luena, as an individual, gore o leke go reetsa, pick up Luena, because sometimes people aren't very good at articulating themselves. We've got the Rosses, the Agathas, the Gaones, but they're those people who really have different personalities, who are very melancholic. You can't get a word out of them. Things like just watching, kana haole motho o tshwantse re o khone go bona go bona motho go na le go mo khona go bona ha motho a sa nna senta wa khona go bona nyana dunyana tsone
go wela gone ko emotional intelligence ya ga Agatha ya rata tota ha nne re ka ithuta mo ne re ka itse go dira le demo tse dintsi le go respond to situations wa bona re motho a thoka ha letso bo itse gore o itse go bala, read the situation.
Read the room, read the
room,
situation. I think we have a big problem with that because we are not very kana go bala rumu rosi. You need to understand hore it comes from you wena o sena mathata o sena sehihi wa tlhaloganya. That's why we tell batho ba bogologolo bana ba khona mago o na khona go lemoga gore o imile o sa itse wena because o na sena sehihi se o na bona. The intuition was hectic way back in the day, and that's why they didn't find themselves in a lot of pickle, in a bit of a pickle like we do these days as young women or as women. So if we are emotionally intelligent, our intuition as spiritual beings, when you connect with your spiritual side, that's part of wellness.
Yes.
You know, wellness we're out here just talking about, hey, you've got to be fit. Hey, there's so much involved. Wellness is similar mo maikutong kana, isn't really mo meleng. Maikuto hanse sente. It's going to show itself and manifest itself on the outside, which is your body, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so utshwanetse ro khone go lemoga dilo. Bona go moga go lemoga. It will take us very far when it comes to these kind of situations.
And that's how we can support people.
That's how we
like
can
you.
support people. Yeah.
Talking to life coach Miss Agatha Atlholang, as well as master life coach, as well as grief and bereavement coach Miss Gaone Moatlhodi. Before the break, we talked about unhealthy ways of dealing with grief, the destructive behaviors that come along with this, you know, drugs and substance abuse, promiscuity, risk-taking, isolation and solitude, we have learned are not the same thing, all right? Rushing your healing process as well, physical neglect, all sorts of things, you know, reckless spending as well. We're laughing, but it's not funny. You know, those are some of the things that happen when... What does that remind you of, Anne?
You know how when you're not feeling too great, o thala the whole day o le mo dipijameng, o sa nkgesenta maitso sa le go nna go no le di ice cream o di tab.
And that's what it is.
Was it that picture just came to my mind?
You neglect yourself.
100%.
And you know, that is a sign of depression, is no longer taking care of yourself physically.
Yeah.
You know,
we're laughing, but you know, grief is heavy.
Yeah.
Grief is very heavy. And it happens out of character. Right,
guys,
it's not even a joke. It's not even a joke because now you put what's going on with me.
Right?
You know, like
exactly. So you see all of these big emotions that adults go through when they're handling grief. Now, what for small children who don't know what's going on, right?
100%.
How do we support bana ba banyenyane when they are grieving? Where do we even start with them?
So I think grieve, you know, but there's a saying, if you're old enough to love, you're old enough to grieve.
Right.
You know?
And children love.
To grieve, and children love.
Wholeheartedly. Unconditionally.
Also, you want to add
It's
something?
okay, go on.
Yeah, and also I think for me, there's a lot of education that needs to come forth as parents and as adults in general. Ako re ithuteng thata re normalizing go bua le di child psychologist re nnehela le bona tse re ba botse gore kanta ha ngwana ntse yana re dira yang wa bona, because ga se mongwe le mongwe o na le bothale ba teng le nna yana gompieno yana. I am not I haven't gone to school for child psychology, but I do know that I le gore go na le batho ba banyenyane le bone ba na le maikuto, so make it a mele nna ke go educate nna ke ona le bana. So I need to understand how does the small mind work? And that's part of your personal development. The moment as a parent, is the moment where you have to start taking your learning seriously. Ya parenting le abana gore ngwana ke motho ntseng jang.
Can I ask you two ladies a question just to jump in there?
Yes.
For somebody listening to us right now who is maybe grieving or, for future reference, they're listening to this now and God forbid they lose somebody later on in their lives, right? Is it okay to cry in front of the kids? Can I cry in front of my kids?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't know what you think, Gaone.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Also, go ba thusa gore le bone ba khona go express their emotions, because if mommy is not okay and mommy explains how le hela all the time, you're not an emotional basket, but you express yourself and you make them understand what's going on, gore mamu tule bothoko. So ha gongwe ha re ba hitela maikuto a rona le bone ba hita bona, because then they think it's not okay to show your pain.
Or sometimes, because we know children to be so compassionate, children actually feel really big feelings and we don't give them enough credit, So sometimes what we will find that I've also seen is that ha bona mama le lajan, and they are also feeling like they want to cry. They take a step back and they say, you know what? I don't want to make this worse for mama. Mama's already going through so much, right? Let me not add to her pain and let me not make this worse. Let me manage myself.
That's what happens as well. That's why I was saying olele ota otalos and ubele bana. Kira go motsadi uta ba lela la le no sa una pina ga go bana selem go gore bana ba mutola botoko. So gona le bana ba ile gore ha ba bona batsadi because rata batsadi ba rona motsadi o tule botoko uta botoko, like you were saying ota bo ya no ba maikuto a ga go go thoko re ya no nna wena motsadi,
right?
So it's I always advise parents gore la ha o lela yana o to thalosetsa le bana gore why o lela gore le bone ba khone go nna le
understanding
ya go lela ba khone go lela le bone ba tlhaloganye gore it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah, and I think also to add on to what Gaone is saying is it's like when you're fighting in front of the kids. I don't have a problem with adults actually having disagreements in front of children, but in a way it's not over the top, because how about the aketsa bana gore ga gona reality ya gore re khona go sautana,
right?
Wa tlhaloganya re so as she's saying, when we're doing things, let's be cognizant of the fact that their kids are here and they are watching Meche and they are processing Meche, but you want gore ere ha go dua ho ebe le gore ngwana o na le a healthy understanding of conflict management le resolution wa bona. So yona khanye ya go tsamao thalosa. This is one thing I feel Motswana ba leka mo go sone thata, especially I see this when I'm coaching people, because ke lemoga gore irile go ntse go iragala dilo mo malapeng kana bana ba reprimandiwa go no go sena thaloso ya gore king re ira yana go tsana le ha o reprimanda ngwana o tsantse re mo reprimande o mo thalosetsa gore why are you getting this treatment, what does this mean, ebile o ska ngala ga wa tsona ro ngalle ngwana, you are the adult here, my darling. There's a difference between the adult and the child. So you've got to be the higher person. That's why this is why I keep like stress. The moment you have kids, you have to go and learn how do you deal lebana, how do you deal with your own personal emotions without having
just because you used to be a child doesn't mean you know how to deal with one.
It doesn't mean that you know how to deal with one. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful statement right there.
Yeah.
Hey, look at Taboka nodding in the background.
So, no botsaka ngwana go roka le moga yang a kere.
Yeah.
Gore ngwana o na le o ta bona ka behavior change. Ngwana hela go wa mmitsi. Ba bangwe ba khona go simolla ba bedwetting.
Yeah.
Ba bangwe ba simolla acting out le go skweleng go ngwana a pasa ga sthola pasa kera le mo monyenyanyana so wona o simolla o ta le mo ga le motsadi gore ngwana o ga sa thole elene sente wa lela gongwe ha o mmotsa ga itse ro lelang, but 2 minutes later we go tshameka wa go khona go lemogela gore go nne le change tota mo behavioreng ya ngwana.
Yeah, and I often say, parenting is such a big job that if you are not present, I mean, in modern day society, I really do feel that a lot of parents are detached from their children. They can't even notice what Gaone is talking about. Or even when they see it, they kind of just brush it. Or we are too fast paced. And you can understand that it does happen because parents, some people are single moms, some people are single dads. So the support system. But all I would like to say is, guys, let's get back. Know your children.
Right.
Because these are the same kids by and that is going to be difficult to manage.
Right.
You understand? Moving with your children, watching your children, being there go soccer practice, being there go netball practice, being around your child. How are you, baby? What did you do? What was happening? Because you are literally protecting your child from because in that state of grief, whoever will be taking care of the child or whatever, should the parent have passed away or whatever, that child 13 and above, it becomes very difficult to manage these kids.
Yeah.
Hey. So if you're not there between 1 and 13, you're going to have a problem. 13 up to 21, kind of 25. So you have no choice but to be there, to see wana through hands ahola. That's why we tell our society, but now mongwe le mongwe a nne le ngwana. Ba sa itse di demand tsa gompieno. Ebe gotwe ka gore batho ga bana bana ga se batho ba sepe. Real, parents will tell you this is a job. I have women who I coach. They don't regret having their kids, but it's too much. And now you have to ease them through that parenting and showing them everything is important. Your career is important, but your kids are just as important. So let's create a balance.
Ladies, before we wrap up our episode, I need us to comb through one thing in particular, right?
Yeah.
If you are just tuning into our conversation, by the way, this is the Wellness Pod, and we are with wellness and life coach Agatha Atlholang, as well as master life coach and grief and bereavement coach Gaone Moatlhodi, and we're talking navigating grief in our daily lives, right? I think gantsi ga re bua ka, botlhoko ba just grieving and all of the emotions that come with losing a loved one. We stop right at that point, a loved one, right? There are so many complicated things that come with grief, including, I want us to have the conversation about what do I do and how do I grieve and how do I manage the feelings of losing motsadi o eleng gore o na se mo botshelong ba me.
Yeah,
I have grown up with an absent father.
Yeah.
O tsamaile ke le ngwana, and o ntse sena sepele nna my entire life. And then I become an adult and ke utlwala the passing of my parent.
Or I then somehow find out
Yeah. Where do I start? I'm angry. I am sad. Should I be sad? I'm not sad. Should I be sad? Am I not processing this, the right way?
Am I a bad person?
Am I a bad person? What do we do about that?
What I would say is honor your emotions, honor your feelings, be true to yourself.
Yeah.
And what you're feeling.
Right.
An absent parent, grief, you were grieving them already, the absence. That's loss. They were not in your life. So now you've been grieving them, but and then you hear it's an individual experience. Baba, when they feel relieved, I get it.
Yeah.
They don't feel anything at all. I get it.
Yeah.
Because how much it can.
And then they do feel.
Then there are those baba nale anger. And then guilt. Maybe I should have made an effort, to get to know them better.
Sometimes anger at the other parent. Why didn't you make a more concerted effort to have this person in my life? And I didn't know the person.
Absolutely, absolutely, Russ. And like Gaone is saying, it is an individual experience, because like she mentioned, we have different people. There are those by long they're just like, yeah, okay, hey, the dude is gone, man. It's like, well, I don't know how I feel about this, I don't know. Then they're like, you know what? I'm feeling this. I don't know if I should be feeling this, but I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. I'm feeling a little bit of pain.
Yeah.
And you have to honor your feelings.
Feelings.
Yeah, counseling. Go and see someone. Unpack, because there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes.
There's a lot to unpack there, especially how what you are dealing with two things. Experience and then here you are also as a parent, maybe with your own kids, experiencing some sort of tension because you cannot relate because of that one particular person. Now, let's say maybe it was your dad and you're a guy, let's say, for example, that was your father who went off. It's difficult for you to be a father. This is one thing that a lot of men don't, I think society doesn't understand about men, that the masculine is really, really important in that when a boy child doesn't grow up with his dad, his masculinity now, not experiencing your dad, knowing that your dad has just passed away, it has a toll on you and has an impact on your masculinity as well. So it's very important to go off for coaching and counseling and really we would say in your own individual space because
whether we there's that biological connection.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So something when you lose a parent, a part of you dies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Whether you like it or
whether you like it, you them or not.
And that's the thing, Ross. This is a very good point. Either through divorce or through whatever it is, we just think and that's it. Ngwana is part of that individual, and that's why we need to try and make things work. And the one thing that we forgot, Ross, remember when we were talking about step parenting, blended families. Now, what happens when Rossi, you are in this blended family, and then as the stepmom, your stepkid's father, your stepkid's father, being the biological father of the children, passes away.
Right.
Remember how we spoke about it's so important to be in a blended family. You guys are settled. You've allowed professionals to come and transition you. Your stepkids have lost their father. Because it's also going to be a tough time for them.
Yeah.
Also, how do you support their biological mother? You still interact with kind of like Alewani, so to speak, So those things are there.
When you mentioned that, it propels me to ask the question, as somebody's husband or somebody's wife, should I be, upset about the fact that my now wife is grieving their ex so hard? I've married Taboka, and Taboka's ex-wife passes away, and Taboka is a mess.
Yeah.
Should I feel some type of way about his reaction?
Emotional intelligence, Agatha, loso ke loso.
Yeah.
How ka kuwata wa bolela motho gore ska utela mambo thoko ha thoka hetsa ska.
Absolutely.
Serious wa bona. So this is why re tshwantse go ikaga mo botshelong. Mo tshwantse o itse gore ha nne ke nyetswe ke motho ke ne ke morata. Ke na le connection le ene. And it doesn't mean gore ga ke rata wena ke motho. As much as nka uta bothoko ke bona motho a thule ke kula ba thoka hala bothoko bo. So how do you then say to me motho ke meeting personally ra a thoka hetse be ke
just because they're my ex-wife and we didn't get along when they
emotional
died.
Intelligence.
It's very important. And how do we support each other? After that, it's actually insane. It's like two people. Let me give you one that really hurts me all the time. You've got two people, they're married. ebe ba thokahallwa ke ngwana. Let's say ibile ngwana o thokahala mo swimming poolong. Rragwe ngwana gongwe mmagwe ngwana anasa na le mo lapeng o rragwe ngwana ke ene na le mo lapeng, and then the other spouse is not there. And then in the beginning they are going through it, and then because they don't go through the proper channels, what they tell gore go nna le blame ka mso go a divorceiwa. Oh wait, but can't these two people, were they not in the same bed conceiving a child? Did we not bring these people together as family A and family B? Now that it's an accident. It could have been you, my wife. It could have been you, my husband, who was there at the house. Where is the compassion? Where is the support for one another? Where is the love? We with each other. We are so abusive to one another.
But also, I think Agatha, grief is like a monster. When it comes, it's so intense. How to deal with it. Explain. How explain goes into their own shell because you are trying to identify it, you are trying to navigate through it, but because the life coaching,
the
counseling.
That brings me, because we've come to the end of our time, ladies. Now we need to discuss the importance now of the support group. Some people feel like they need to grieve by themselves and they need to get over the pain that they're feeling in an isolated place. What would you say to people like that? And, you know, what are the benefits of being in such a group around other people who are going through possibly the same thing?
Monatoa, a support group is shared experiences. Because most of the time when you go through this, you think it's a personal attack. You know, when you don't talk to other people, you think it's only happening to you. So when you sit in a support group, how the story you know, oh, okay, you know, and then also how it's a support group wa go kopana le Agatha o sabolong go dira le grief for 20 years. O bona wena o ta le gore go ngona le bo 3 months wa bona. It gives you hope. You know, how make Agatha go se tsa tsamaya go gore re le nna meng ka toto banka. Yes.
Right.
No, 100%. Hela. I think being in a support system, I mean, in a support group or a system, whatever it is that you might be in, you know that hope, we can continue. Things can happen to us and we can still move on, which is something that a lot of us don't have. And also it's very encouraging and motivating and inspiring to just be around people by Lengkore. You are having the conversations, they're allowing you to make sense of what's going on in that mind of yours without any judgment, without anything. Are you okay?
It gives you a sense of belonging, because when you lose someone, you feel lost. So support group, because you're going through the same thing. You feel like you belong. Like I have my tribe here. Unlike you're trying to share with a friend who's never lost a parent or a child. You know, but you go there and you're like, I belong. It gives you a sense of belonging.
And I think, let me just throw in one last thing. Even though there's nothing like when but honali a sense of, like, let me give you an example. I've always said, I'm thankful that my parents went before me. Because I think it would have been such a painful experience for them to lose a child. So sometimes when I sit, when I'm there and I'm sitting, let's say in a support group, and I'm thinking, okay, I've lost my mom or I've lost my dad, And then this woman is sitting there and she's saying, hey, the way we tried so hard to conceive this child and she's gone now.
Eish.
Hey, it hits different. Wait. Na mme o toka itse ke le 21 mosadi ke ene o mo bothokong ngwana ga gagwe ke gona ntseng a thokagala o fa efe. It's a very different, it's an experience for each one of us.
But it puts things into perspective.
I sit down and I find myself thinking, I'm so thankful my parents experienced me for 21 years. My mother experienced me for 21 years.
Yeah.
This poor woman. You know,
ne ke re ka re mo gongwe gape support group gongwe ha o thokahaletswe ke motsadi o bo ithala motsadi le na thokahaletswe ke ngwana, sometimes la bond, you know. You have that bond le no bona le motsadi nyana le na ba nna le ngwana,
and you help yourself through, you help each other through the process,
right? All right, that brings us to, I guess, the end of this discussion. You know, we're not done because there's something that I learned from the two of you that is quite interesting that I think we need to talk about next week, just to wrap up this series of grief. I get obviously there's too much to talk about it and we could never wrap it up, but we will try. Understanding grief is not just bereavement. Grief is, you know, you're suffering the loss of something, and that can also happen. Maybe you've lost your job, you've lost your money, you've lost this, you can lose other things, and yes, you can experience grief through those losses. So we're going to talk about that next week, but let's wrap up with a WhatsApp here. This is from Gaopa. It says, good evening, Ross, Boss Lady, and Miss Gaone. Most of what passes for grief support these days is less than useful because most people and many professionals think of grief and loss as aberrations, detours from a normal happy life, right? Modern society believes that the goal of grief and support, or grief support rather, personal or professional, is to get out of grief, stop feeling pain, right? Grief is something to get through as quickly as possible, as an unfortunate but fleeting experience that is best sorted and put behind you. I get it. That's what people define as well. So it's that faulty belief that leaves so many grieving people feeling alone and abandoned on top of their grief. I have come to understand that platitudes from our fellow church members and cheerleading solve nothing. You'll hear all manner of things about your grief. People wouldn't want you to be sad and say things like, everything happens for a reason. At least you had them as long as you did. You're strong and smart and resourceful. You will get through this. This experience will make you stronger. And in fact, it's, or rather this kind of support only makes you feel like no one in the world understands.
Yes. Absolutely.
100%. I agree with that. So you know, this is just what it is. I think for me, I'm loving this conversation because it's not often that people talk about this, you know. And Ross, thank you so much for just creating this platform. Today, I'm really feeling it, you know, as I'm really in here today. You know?
I'm really glad, ladies. I'm grateful for you for having this conversation, not just with me, but with Barezi Barona Bagyabs FM. These are the conversations we need to have. Somebody out there, you know, stumbled upon this conversation and they needed to hear it. So, you know, it's a good thing that we're doing here, and we can talk about some of the grief that people don't feel like, you know, is worthy of feeling. You're ne grief ya lifestyle. COVID itlile, you know, it's a maileka miracle wa me, this, that, and the third, my livelihood.
We'll talk about that
so we're going to talk about that next week. Those are important conversations to have. In the meantime, where can we reach you, Gaone?
Gaone leka mo tshwara mo 7393 quad 8.
7393 quad 8.
Facebook leka tsanamo Grief and Bereavement Support Group Motswana.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, we're on 7574-9948. That's 7574-9948. We are on Ikage Motswana. Go Facebook. We're on Ikage Motswana, the podcast, on YouTube.
And on email?
On email, we're info@genuinefitnessbw.com. So those of you who are interested in getting, in inquiring about our services, those are the platforms. But
life coaching services.
Yes, life coaching services. Ross, what did you pick up from today's session? What was your thing?
Everybody, well, for me, I think it is, you know, from the perspective of somebody who is currently grieving.
Yeah.
I would say currently grieving. It's been 2 years since I lost my dad, and I go through the motions every day. You know, sometimes I wake up and I go, wow, I really miss my dad today, and I'll feel bad. So I think, you know, what I pick up a lot, or what I feel compelled to do a lot, is to be able to also talk to other people who are now going through the same thing. Not to rush them through their process and say, look at me 2 years later, I'm okay. You know, my head is above water. I don't even know if it is. You know, it's not hui khanta and, you know, to say, look at me. But it's to also just be able to be there for other people in a way that I feel like people could have been there for me, but didn't have the opportunity to do, because maybe I closed myself off and I didn't say what I needed at the time. So I think, you know, that's what I'm getting from this conversation is support people, man. People, don't rush people through their grief. You know, this experience will make you stronger. You know, everything happens for a reason. Oh, God's will is done. You know, that kind of thing. It will catch up with you eventually. Just let people go through stuff. Yeah. Not destructively. Obviously, if you can see somebody is harming themselves hella through whatever the ways that we described, you know, those drugs, those substances, isolate, risk taking, promiscuity, you know, those things. It's not for us to judge people and tell them how to live their lives, but we can, you know, there are ways to better support our people. Yeah, so that, I guess that's it, ladies, right? Let's go home. Thank you so much. Power to engage your world. This is the Wellness Pod, or rather the end of the Wellness Pod. Purple Nights continues all the way till 10 p.m. Little bit of music. This is Vis-a-Vis featuring Yao Bannerman on